And I'm just going to move my video order around a little bit. I'm serving as the host for this panel discussion. So I've moved myself down to the bottom, and I have the true rock stars of our event here today, Jen and Paula, for the panel discussion that I'll be moving up to the top. And we're going to be having a really fun talk today about lessons learned as a solopreneur. Before we do that, though, I'm going to ask first Jen and then Paula to take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about your business and where you are today. So Jen, we'll go with you first, and then we'll go into Paula next.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Brenda and Paula. So happy to be here. I came from a career in corporate of about 25 years. My focus was marketing, research, and consulting. Paula and I actually met through our research background. And in 2014, I decided to leave corporate and start my own business, basically doing something, the work similar to what I had been doing inside, but really focusing on the part I loved the most. So I became a contractor and started my own research business. And then in 2020, I became a certified professional coach. And I have been working with women on their careers and their career path and doing coaching ever since then.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Jen. And how about you, Paula? Tell us a little bit about you and your business, if you could.
Yeah, hi. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, Brenda and Jen, especially. It's so fun. Yeah, so like Jen mentioned, I too have a really long history of consumer market research and user experience research in my background. That was corporate and small business and working a lot with tech companies. So the reason I decided I wanted to go out on my own is after I experienced a lot of grief and loss in my life. And sometimes when that happens, we like to take a pause and just figure out what is next, which Jen knows all about. And I had decided I really wanted to take some time, figure out what I wanted to do next. And I too added skills to my set. I was really looking to become a coach and add facilitation to my offerings and just to my experiences. So I now coach as well, and I conduct workshops on mental fitness and mental health.
Wonderful. So we're gonna be talking today about lessons learned as a solopreneur, and you both are both, I think, all of the below, so to speak, solopreneurs. You are also both coaches and consultants, and you're both speakers. Authors, I'm not sure. Do you either of you have a book or not yet? I
It's
wasn't sure about that one.
going
I'm like, I probably
through,
should have taken author out. Maybe
It's in the
someday.
plan. Yeah.
I have aspirations to write a more professional book, but fun little fact is I had wanted to write a book a long time ago, and then I ended up writing a fun book instead. So I
Yeah,
am technically an author, but not for my business.
not a business book. Not yet.
Yeah,
I feel like
it's a
both of
fun
you are
book.
like not yet on the book. And
Yeah.
and by the way, for those of you who are watching, if you're in the same category of not an author yet, go ahead and self-disclose that into the comments and share that with us. So I'm going to start by just asking some questions about, kind of your business journey. And we heard a little bit of this in your introduction, but I'm going to reframe and just ask the question again. And I'll start with you, Jen. What prompted you to start your own business? What prompted you to leave corporate and to do this on your own?
Yeah, I was really a corporate girl for a long time. I thought I would be in corporate forever, and I still love working with corporate clients. But I was at the point where I was traveling so much for my business. I had young kids at the time who are now 15 and 19, but they were at a prime stage of their development. And I just remember this one moment where my youngest daughter said something like, "Tell those people we need you at home. You can't keep leaving." And I was like, oh gosh. So that, along with the fact that, I have found that as you climb the corporate ladder, the job that you got into because you love it starts to change. And I really, at that point, had loved this one particular part of the work I did, which was qualitative research and focus group moderating. And I just wanted to go do that and do my own thing and be done with all the corporate layers and all those things. So a little bit of personal, a little bit of professional, both in that decision.
Okay, very good. How about you, Paula? What was your journey to going on your own? What was that like?
Yeah, for me, it had been, I think, a little while in the making. I just didn't recognize it as it was bubbling up. And the thing that kind of sent me over the edge, it was actually two things, and that was the passing of my mom,
Mm-mm.
and that kind of got me starting to think about it, not very seriously, but I just was like, well, wow, it became very clear to me how fragile we all are,
Mm-mm.
and how we really only have this one life that we know of. I ended up kind of getting through that process. It took a while for me to recover. It was a pretty traumatic experience for me, because I was her primary caregiver at that point. Fast forward, not very long after that, I lost my dad, also pretty tragically. And it just really kind of blew up my world. And I thought, I think there's something's telling me that I just need to reevaluate what I'm doing. So for me, it was adding skill sets to to what I already knew how to do, but I was very interested in doing for a long time. And I just decided to take that time for myself and create something that I thought I could add to the world.
Well, I think you're absolutely amazing in what you do, and I want to say I'm sorry for both of your losses too. And I feel like sometimes we need to acknowledge when people tell us that they've lost a loved one. I feel like this has happened to me too. Sometimes when my husband will tell somebody his mom passed away, and they won't even acknowledge it, and they'll move on. Like it feels like we need to have empathy for others as well, because there's major things that have happened that you said rock your world. As I mean, it's like it really turns everything upside down, and sometimes that pushes us into new paths that we wouldn't ever have thought of otherwise. But I think we need to like reflect and say that, and it's not like let's not it doesn't make it awkward. I think it makes you human, right, Paula, when we acknowledge those things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the flip side too. Like I now understand when people can't, or they don't have the capacity to have empathy for that.
Yeah.
I used to kind of resent that a little bit, like why can't they understand me, or why are they not being more empathetic about this? But the reality is some people just don't know, and
Yeah.
that's okay, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, we all in it's different circumstances, and sometimes it feels awkward and whatnot. But all right, so we talked about our journey to starting your business. Now you're here and you're in the thick of it, so to speak, ladies. So what do you
Oh yeah.
love most about being self-employed? And let's start with you, Paula, on this one first. What do you love most about what you do now?
Oh, well, there's just obviously the flexibility of you having the ability to make your decisions on how you use your time, where you put your effort, what kind of business you want to create, what kind of connections you want to create, right? You get to choose what the type of people you want to be around and who you want to learn from. I mean, there's so much to learn. So being able to be discerning about what it is that you think you need next,
Mhm.
and listening to that. So I love that kind of the flexibility and the creativity you get to discover, because every business is different and every human behind the business is different. So really kind of leaning into what is it that I really want to create here, I think is just so fun.
That freedom and flexibility, absolutely. How about
Mhm.
you, Jen? What do you love most about being self-employed?
Yeah, I think at first my flexibility was such a big part of what I wanted, but now that more years have gone by, I feel like the most important thing to me is that I am doing something that is meaningful to myself and to others, and that makes an impact. And I get to choose, to do that work. I feel like I'm truly doing the work now that I was born for. And my two words. Some of the people on this live stream may have heard me say this before, but it's all about spark and connect others. And I get to control how I do that. So that's great. Also, early on when I was doing more of my consulting work, I loved that if I choose to take on more work and be busy, it's benefiting me. So I
Hmm.
remember the very first like December, I celebrate Christmas, and I was doing qualitative research, and a project came up that would have had me very busy throughout December. And it's always tempting because the money is there. And it was the first time I said no to a project, and I had all this, remorse. But at the end of the day, I got to choose if I am going to take this on and allow myself to be super busy during the holidays, then I benefit. It's not just something that I'm doing because the company has assigned me this project. And that was huge, so empowering. And also, I have found a level of support in the entrepreneurial community, including Paula and I support each other all the time. And that's not always there in the corporate world. There's a little bit more competition. Everyone's going for those same promotions. I feel like it's so wonderful in the entrepreneurial world that I've been in, just how much support we all have for each other, and that we know there's plenty for everyone. And that's just a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of interesting too how the longer you go on, I mean, you can be selective about the things that you say spark and joy, the things that light you up from inside. But you also probably have learned too, Jen, like the things that in the beginning you probably took everything you could
Oh,
do to bring in money. And then at some point you start being a little bit more selective. Would you agree with that?
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And, and there were times too when I would be really disappointed when I was doing consulting work. I'd be super disappointed that I didn't win a project. And you can get really down about that. And then a week later, another project would come up that I liked even more, that I wouldn't have been able to take on if the first one had come through. So there's a huge amount of trust and faith that needs to go into being an entrepreneur.
Paula, did you want to add something to that?
Well, what I wanted to add was that I love this talk about your different stages of your business, right? And as you grow, and the way that you grow is you do take on things that maybe you're not sure you really want to do, but it is part of the learning process. And without having done some of those things that you weren't sure about, it wouldn't have clarified for you what you really, really want to do. So I like to encourage people to just go out there and do. I was just talking to someone yesterday, just go out there and do something, right? Like there's a difference between having a strategy and this is the only thing I can do versus here are all the things I can do. And for now, maybe it's okay to go ahead and do a little bit of everything.
And you dabble a little bit and you kind of figure things out. And I'm hearing like a theme here of like learning and resources and community. And these are things that we gain through our journey of being solopreneurs. And, we're enthusiastically self-employed. Days where we may not have been as enthusiastic about it. So let's kind of think back to where you were at the beginning of your journey to being self-employed. And I'm going to start with you on this question, Jen. If you could talk to yourself at the beginning of the process, what would you tell yourself now, knowing what you know now, but maybe that you didn't know at the start of the whole process?
Yeah, so I feel like I have two beginnings. The first one was when I left corporate and went into consulting. And then I started anew when I began my coaching business in 2020. And something I did the second time around that I would certainly recommend for others is to take the time away from life and busyness and really get clear on why you're doing what you're doing. What is your purpose? What is the impact you hope to have? And give yourself some space to do that ideally away from home in a different environment. I use retreats for that sort of thing. I have done my own personal business retreats where I've gone to a hotel or somewhere for a couple of days. I've also gone on retreats where other coaches are leading me through some really, really awesome reflective exercises that help me get more clear on what it is I'm trying to create. So I would definitely suggest that. I'll be telling you later. I lead retreats now, not just for business planning, but I just think you need to give yourself that focus and that space. And then one other thing I'd love to throw in, probably the best thing I did when I left corporate, like in that very first 3 months of leaving corporate, was to go to an industry conference. And it's probably where I met Paula. I went to an industry conference, and it created these relationships with other people who are already doing what I wanted to do. I learned a ton. I made great connections. I had my first opportunity come out of that conference. So just putting yourself into the environment where you can meet others who are either doing what you're doing or who might need the services you're looking to offer.
On that note, I'm a reminder our viewers, whether you're watching this live or in playback, and if you're watching on a YouTube or LinkedIn, wherever it is, go into the comments right now and remind people what you do, because you never know when you're going to come across someone who might be interested in learning more about your area of expertise or your service. All right, I'm going to flip that same question back to you, Paula. If you could talk to yourself, Paula at the start of her solopreneurship journey, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, first of all, I would encourage people to try to prepare to the extent possible. Whether now you can't prepare for everything, and I will be the first to tell you that, but there may be some level of finances you want to secure, whether it's for 6 months or a year, just to make sure that that your nervous system is not going off the chain and crazy because you're worried about where your next dollar is going to come from, because that may happen very quickly and it may take a while. And I think one of the things that I wish I knew ahead of time was this may take a little more patience than I thought. Like sometimes you see people who are really successful and you're like, oh, well, I want some of that.
Right.
And you think it's going to like, oh, okay, this will just be like 3 months or 6 months or something, right? But as we were saying earlier, like your path could squiggle a bit. Like it's not going to necessarily be a straight line. And there's a lot of learning to be done, not only on what it is exactly you're trying to create or accomplish, but then also just what's happening in your head about what you're actually doing. And so sometimes that takes time as well. So having some patience and having some grace with yourself. And I love what Jen is saying about putting yourself out there and just leaning into something that you think that you are interested in. I too have become pretty involved in some local organizations like my local Chamber of Commerce, which I really am enjoying tremendously. And you never know the conversations there that will happen, but you need to have them.
Yes. Brenda,
go ahead, Jen.
add one more thing? I would be remiss to not say this because Paula and I both come from the consumer qualitative research world. Yeah. Another thing that is so important that I did early on is I had a lot of conversations with people who might be my ideal target. And I really listened to the words they were using and how they were describing their challenges that I might be able to help them solve. I created a spreadsheet, my consumer voice, which is, work that Paula and I have done for brands in the past and companies. What are they talking about? What is really keeping them up at night? And how do they describe it? I think that I came into it with my own words. And then I learned that they talk about it in a slightly different way. And I'm going to resonate with my customer much better if I'm using words that they would use.
Yeah.
Jen, I still do that. I mean, I still kind of have like a running spreadsheet of what was what I thought they would say and what they actually say. Super powerful. Yeah.
I love it. And if anyone's been watching since the beginning, since we started the session, Lee Meadows was talking first about consulting. It's not about you. And he was talking about this whole concept of, are you hearing or are you listening? And it kind of ties back to this whole thing too. Like, are you hearing what they're saying? Are you really listening to the words that they're using? And I think to your point, both Paula and Jen, like, are you bringing that language back into how you're marketing yourself and you're forming up your products and your services as well. So a lot of themes are kind of interconnecting here. I'm going to do a quick check with Vicki, who's our next guest, just to make sure we can see and hear her okay. And then we're going to move into some Q&A here. Hey, Vicki, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing, Brenda?
Good. We can see and hear you, and it sounds like you can see,
Awesome.
hear, and hear us, right? Is that okay?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Right,
Thanks.
perfect. We'll see you in just a few minutes, Vicky. I'm going to move you back into the green room for now, and then we're going to keep the conversation going here with Paula and Jen. All right, so lots of great insights and learnings so far about being a solopreneur, being a coach, consultant, things that you've learned along the journey. You also both touched on a bit on training and resources, and I just want to like ask that question in another way. What training or resources have you used along the way? And I think also, when and why did you seek training? Because there's been talks of investments and when do you invest in your business, and but also I think knowing when you've reached the threshold of what you can do on your own. So Jen, I'm going to start first with you, and then we'll go to Paula. What training resources have you used, and when and why did you decide to seek that?
Well, first, I want to mention that I am a student of Brenda's. And, I probably should have done that sooner, but a couple years into my business, the more that I am putting myself out on LinkedIn, but I was ignoring my profile. I was like, I need to update that profile at some point. And I would cringe when I would see the little message, that notification, so many people looked at your profile. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm marketing myself out there, and then I'm not showing my best, putting my best foot forward on my profile. So I think the key is finding like what tools are most important for you and your business. For someone else, it might be Instagram. For someone else, it might be YouTube. For me, LinkedIn is critical, and I have really learned so much by working with you. Paul and I decided to do that together. I really like taking a course like that with someone so that you go through it together and learn together. And the other just would be, various business coaches, but my watch out would be not to spend all your time learning. You know more than you think you do. And I think at the beginning, I probably was listening to too many different people, hiring different coaches. And at some point, you need to hone in either on one particular person you trust, and also trust yourself.
Yeah,
So
I like that.
I'll leave it at that and let Paula fill in from there.
All right, Paula, what would you say? What
We'll
would you
come
add to
back
that?
to the trust yourself thing, I think, at the end here.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think you need to look at what is this, like, what are the technical skills that you might need, and figure out what exactly you might need to learn there, and versus the kind of the softer skills that you might need. And getting support is really, really key for sure. And when I decided that I think part of my journey was to become more visible and figure out for myself what it is that I want to talk about and the value that I can bring to people. And so that's why I chose to become more visible on LinkedIn and get the support of people like you, Brenda, who know the platform and can help you be kind of more efficient and effective. So that was definitely a part of my strategy, is finding some folks that I admired on this platform, and then sign up.
Awesome.
Definitely a way I invested. Also, of course, my coach training that I continue to add to as we speak. So I think it's a decision, and then lots of technical things. If you think that you want to have a presence online, there's a lot to learn there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like knowing where your limits and where, like, I need some help in this technical area because I know it's really holding me back, or it could be
Yeah.
helping me to propel myself forward.
But
We're gonna.
can I just say too, but
Oh
at
yeah,
the
go ahead.
same time, you want to keep it as simple as possible, because for a
Mhm.
while you might be exploring things, and then you want to take a step back and say, okay, what do I really need here that is efficient and effective for me? Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And we've got a couple of comments already coming in. And here's actually a question from Joan for both of you. What advice do you have for those that are starting out that may not have the financial resources to attend an industry related event?
Mhm.
She's done some online ones and will continue to do so. But what about the in person events? Would either of you like to help out Joan with that answer?
Yeah, I mean, I will say the in-person events, now that we're able to be in person, I am so enjoying that. I mean, that is like a vertical that I'm exploring, is just making personal connections is so important to me. So I think going local, there's nothing wrong. There's probably plenty of business in your local area. You do not have to necessarily be going to, flying around to industry related events that are not in your area.
Mhm. And I would just be super strategic and targeted. Starting any sort of business will involve some investment, whether it's a business loan or however you're doing that. So it's asking yourself, like, if I could attend one event this year, what would it be? And ideally, it is local, so that or drivable, so you're not investing as much in travel. And sometimes there are scholarships out there. I know that the association that Paul and I are involved in, sometimes they have various scholarships for people as well. It's worth looking into.
And to add to that is once you're there, just come up with a plan of how you're going to follow up with people. I think that's a lot of what happens is maybe we attend these things, but then we don't necessarily have a plan of what to do afterwards. So make your plan.
That's a really good point. Making
You
a
have a
plan.
whole nother live-a-thon about conferences.
Right? There's a whole other thing, right? And it was even interesting, like pulling together the event for today. It was like, trying to figure out a mix of topics and speakers and backgrounds and everything. I wanted to make sure. And I got to the point where I'm like, there's no spaces left, but I want to fit more people in. And that's part of the reason I said, well, let's pull in this panel discussion here. And I'm just going to add to what they already said to Joan. Here's another piece of advice. If you don't have the budget to attend an event and it's a big ticket purchase to attend, reach out to the event planner and say, hey, do you need any volunteers? I did this early on in my career. I volunteered to work at a digital marketing conference here in Metro Detroit, and I signed up to help at the registration desk, like giving people their name tags and t-shirts or whatever. And I worked registration from like 7 to 9, and then I got a ticket to go to the event for the rest of the day for free.
That's
So,
awesome.
it wasn't necessarily a scholarship, but it was a volunteer opportunity. And then they allowed me to come into the event. So there's some different creative ways of doing that as well.
Good idea.
All right, ladies. What was that, Paula?
I said, I've done that too. It works fabulously.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to start to wrap us up here for today. And I'm going to pull up your LinkedIn URLs one at a time here. And then I just want to ask if people are interested in working with you, and we'll start with you, Jen. If they're interested in working with you, it sounds like you'd be open to connecting with them on LinkedIn. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. Yes.
And then remind us, if you could, what are the services or offerings that you have for solopreneurs?
Yeah, so I probably the one that would be most relevant right now is the retreat for women. This is specifically for women. It's a living with purpose retreat, and it's about really putting more intention into how we are creating our lives, creating our businesses, creating our careers, and that's coming up in early November. You're going to start to see me talking about it on LinkedIn. You can send me a DM. I also just want to put in a quick plug for a brand new podcast that I just launched a few weeks ago called Spark Your Power. And there's an excellent episode with a woman named Angela Shen that is called How to Shift from Corporate to Starting Your Own Business. And it's a really excellent conversation that would be relevant to the people here.
Wonderful. And I just put your website up on screen too, positionforsuccess.com. Yes. And then the name of that podcast again is Spark Your Power Podcast. So we'll have folks look at that. All right. Yep. Wonderful. All right, Paula, same question for you. You're open to folks connecting with you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Just as mentioned before, if you could just let me know how you heard about me, that's always super helpful. It's a great.
All right. Wonderful. And I know, Paula, you had some resources as well. There's the 30-minute consultation that folks can schedule with you. They can sign up for that. And then you also have the audio events. We'll give you the link for that. So if you register for that, again, if you go to mellermarketing.com/LILESE, we'll make sure to give you all those links and resources. All right, ladies, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation. I've enjoyed getting to know both of you. And I'm so proud of your efforts on LinkedIn. I see like where you are today with your LinkedIn compared to when we first started the journey working together. And I just want to say thank you both for the plug too. I really appreciate that and for being here today.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, Brenda.